a loving God allow his children go through seasons of suffering? The first reason, number one, is because suffering is oftentimes a tool that God will use to ultimately draw us closer to him. Let me say it again. Suffering is oftentimes a tool that God will use to draw us closer to him. Sometimes it's so hard for him to get our attention. We're so busy, we're so distracted. And so sometimes he uses the pain, the suffering, the disappointments to draw us back to him, to say, hey, listen, I am still God in your life. There's a story of this man called Job. Let me tell you a little bit about Job. Job is a very righteous man. He's a straight man. The straightest there is, Pete. A straight man. Job is also a wealthy man. He has a lot of money. He has a lot of wealth. Job is also a healthy man. His health is doing really good. He has a beautiful family. Job has 10 children. And he's a very righteous man. One day, all of a sudden, he gets news that all 10 of his children die on the same day. Now, I don't know about you. I have 2 kids. The parents here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I can only imagine the pain, God forbid, of losing one child. This man, in one day, he loses 10 children. Not only does he lose 10 children, he also loses all of his wealth, all of the money, all of the dollars, all of the money, all of the millions in the bank account. Job loses everything. And even worse, eventually in the same season, Job loses his health. He starts to get sick. And so here is this man who is in the middle of a suffering season, painful season. And then when you read through the book of Job, you will see, and here's what's worse. When he talks to his wife about it, the wife says, why don't you just curse God and die? That was the response of the wife. And so a very painful season. I don't know, maybe some of us here, we're going through some of these painful seasons where God is allowing different things to happen to your life and you don't really understand what's happening. But let me tell you, the suffering that Job went through is like any other suffering that I've ever heard. And so, okay, here's what happens. God uses the suffering in the life of Job as a tool to draw Job closer to him. It was in the disappointment, it was in the pain, it was in the season of disappointment and pain and suffering that Job, he received another level of relationship with God and he drew closer to God. But it took him to go through that season of disappointment, of hurt and of pain in order to draw closer to God. Now here's what Job said at the end of it. In Job chapter 42 verse 5, here is the response that Job gave. Job said, I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes have seen you. Before the pain, I had only heard of you. I had only heard of your goodness. I had only heard of your power. Some of you here, you have parents and you hear of your parents talking about God, how good God is, how great he is, how powerful he is. There's a difference between hearing about the pain, hearing about God's goodness, and experimenting God's goodness. And that's exactly what happened to Job. He had heard of God, but through the suffering, now he was able to see God. it's a different level of relationship. It's a different level of dependence. Because you see, when you go through the suffering, you have no choice but to depend on him. When you go through the suffering, you have no choice but to trust in him. When you go through the pain, you have no trust but to keep your eyes fixed on him. So Job said, before I heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. But it was only because of the pain, because of the struggle, that Job was able to see God and draw closer to him. And it's only through the suffering that we can get to that level of dependence and relationship with God. Does that make sense, everyone? And so, number one, God uses the pain and the suffering as a tool to draw us closer to him. Number two, God uses the pain and the suffering to build Christ-like character inside of you and I. He uses the pain and the suffering to transform us so we can have his image, the Christ-likeness. The image of Christ. What does that mean? The love of Christ, the patience of Christ, the endurance of Christ, the perseverance of Christ. He uses the pain and the suffering to transform us to look more and more like him. In Romans chapter 5, verse 1 through 5, it says, therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have also obtained our introduction by faith into his grace, in which we stand, and we celebrate in the hope of the glory of God. Right? He just said the good part. We celebrate. Look at verse 3 now. And not only this, we also celebrate our tribulations. It's talking about pain now. Knowing that tribulation brings about what? What does it bring about? Tribulation, it brings about perseverance. And perseverance, proving what? Proven character, it gives what? Hope. So there you have it. You have suffering and tribulation. The suffering brings perseverance. The perseverance brings character, and then character brings hope. In verse 5, and hope does not disappoint. Here is one true way that you will never be disappointed by God or disappointed by your circumstances. Because that's what happens in our situation, in our generation. We trust God for something, and when it does not happen, we get discouraged and we turn away from God. Meanwhile, God is trying to build your character. He's not so much interested in the car or the house. Maybe he wants to give you these things, but first and foremost, he wants to see character. He wants to see a reflection of himself in you. And so he says perseverance, proven character. Proven character will give you hope, and hope will never disappoint you. One of my favorite things to do around the house, if you come to my house, you probably won't see me wash dishes. I'm not really good with that, unless I have to. If you come to my house, you probably won't see me broom the floor. I'm not good at that, unless I have to. If you come to my house, you probably won't see certain things that I do. But one thing I love to do around the house, I love to iron. Let me tell you, and when it comes to ironing, something about ironing, I will iron the whole house if I have to. The ironing is just so soothing. I love the fact of taking something that is wrinkled, applying some heat and some pressure to it, and then it transforms to, it's weird, I know. It transforms to something that's perfect, to something that is great. I love ironing. And so most people don't know that with an iron, can I get my ironing board? I love ironing so much that I brought my iron and my ironing board this morning. Most people don't understand. One thing that people need to understand about ironing is that when you are ironing, it's not really the iron that's going to take away the wrinkles. Did you know that? But it's the heat and the pressure that you apply to the shirt or to the pants that's going to take away the wrinkle. And so if I'm ironing my shirt, I'm putting heat, I'm putting pressure. If the shirt could talk, the shirt will say, why so much pressure? Why so much heat? Why so much? And I would respond to the shirt, I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm not trying to get rid of you. I'm not trying to eliminate you. I'm not trying to tear you down. I'm trying to transform your image. So at the end of it, you have a different look. You have a different look because I'm putting pressure. And so what I'm trying to tell you is that after I put the pressure, after I put the heat, the wrinkles start to go away. And then eventually what I have a different shirt that is perfect. I have a different shirt that has no wrinkles. I have a shirt that has no lines. I have a shirt that is different. It has a different image. Why does it have a different image? Because it went through the heat. It went through the suffering. It went through the pressure. And it is only by going through the pressure that the shirt can get rid of itself of the wrinkle and of the creases and of the lines. It's the same spiritual principle. A lot of times we ask God, we say, God, why the pressure? Why the suffering? Why did I have to lose so-and-so? Why am I waiting for so long? Why is this not happening? Why? Meanwhile, God is saying, I'm trying to build character. I'm trying to build perseverance. I'm trying to build something in your image so you can look more and more like me.